plan for the unexpected, which sounds completely ridiculous, but it allows you to stress test things better. So if you're buying, to put this in like a multifamily perspective, if I were going to buy an apartment building versus single family home rental, people ask, well, should I buy a house or should I buy an apartment complex? I was like, it's actually pretty simple. If you have a single family home to rent, which I love that business done properly, by the way, we're actually building a bunch of houses in Kyle, Texas to do this. But as a general rule, an apartment complex, let's say it's a small apartment, has 4 units, just to keep the math simple, versus a single family house. If nobody is living in my house, I'm at 0% occupancy. If I have 4 units in my multifamily and one person moves out, I'm still 75% occupied. So from a risk mitigation standpoint and protecting the downside, which is the pillar of any type of success in this business, I believe, that pushes you towards, this multifamily strategy versus single family homes. So when you're looking at that, do I look and say, okay, when I'm underwriting the pro forma, we're going to be 100% occupied forever? Well, no. You say, no, we're going to be at, what happens at 75%? What happens at 50%? What happens at 25%? So by doing sensitivity analysis and stress testing, for lack of a better word, the scenarios that are completely unexpected. I expect to be fully occupied, certainly in Austin, Texas, or, Phoenix, Arizona, or Dallas, or, these Sunbelt cities that are just growing and they're highly occupied. I'm going to prepare for them not to be occupied. So, one of my favorite sayings that I've, again, heard over the years is, you don't have to plan for good news. You only have to plan for bad news. So with all that said, no matter what the scenario is, if you basically price everything to perfection and you plan everything in a way that it's all going to go perfect, I think you're setting yourself up for failure. So how can I be optimistic and have a lot of courage in where I'm going and believe this is going to happen, whatever. But if it doesn't, I prepared myself, whether with, keeping cash reserves or, just emotionally preparing myself for what could go wrong. I believe that was a huge lesson. And so as we built this firm and, expanded our portfolio, I'm always thinking of the downside, thinking about unexpected issues and planning for them. So if they don't happen, good news. But if they do, we're ready.
There was, let me see if I got it. Where's his book? I always pull it out. I always speak to somebody else about it. Oh, Paul Moore. Paul Moore wrote a great blog post in Bigger Pockets just recently. Absolutely fantastic. He's going to be on my podcast for the 3rd time coming up. The guy's absolutely brilliant. And he said something that ties in exactly with what you're saying. And that is that you don't rely on the market to make your profit. You rely on the market to reduce your profit.
Interesting. That's
exactly what you're saying. That's exactly what you're saying, is the investment has to sustain itself and perform on its own. And the market, you cannot build into your investment strategy that the market's going to take off. You have to take into consideration what happens if the market doesn't take off. Yeah. Is your investment still a strong one?
And beating it up. So when you look at organic rent growth in the Sunbelt cities, as an example, in some cities it's 10%, 8 to 10% on average. Austin has been 7 to 8%, for the last 10 years. I mean, this is enormous growth. So when you're underwriting that, you say, oh, it's going to be 8% forever. Or do you take a more conservative approach and say, okay, if organic rent growth is at 3%, which is kind of the general rule when, underwriting these types of deals, does my deal still pencil, right? So can you still get there with being very high levered, you can make a very high leverage return, but what does it look like with less leverage? When you start toggling these other scenarios in and seeing if success still seems inevitable, I think that's when you really start differentiating yourself between being a gambler and being an investor.